Time for some more nerding out. I've got in my hand the MediaTek Dimensity 9200. So this is a step up from the Qualcomm version I made the other day, talking about the new Snapdragon 8 Generation 2. Well, before the Snapdragon 8 Generation 2 existed a few days ago, this guy right here was launched at the MediaTek Executive Summit 2022, which I was at, and you can actually see some of the photos here. I had an absolute blast. So, of course, a big thank you to MediaTek, who probably won't watch this video, for sending me out there, but had a total blast. And of course, I love learning about this stuff. I've talked about it before in other videos. I grew up on computer hardware. I built my first computer when I was 11. We're talking about an old like 386 computer, a Cyrix 386 DX2 33 megahertz processor, 4 megs of RAM, didn't even have a dedicated video card back then, and I had a 190 megabyte hard drive. So things have changed in a big way. And last year, I was super excited because I got my hands on the 9000, the Dimensity 9000, and I made some kind of, I guess, proclamations back then saying that I thought that Dimensity, like MediaTek, was taking some big steps and taking it to the next level. This chip is proof of that. So 4 nanometer processor, it is online with what we expect now with the flagship processors. This is no longer they're a year behind, they're 2 years behind, and I thought it's interesting. Their mantra, what they were talking about at the summit the whole time, was more than mobile. They're actually like #1 when it comes to, I think, smart processors and smart TVs, smart speakers, Chromebooks, a couple other things. They're all over the place, but they're really trying to permeate into the more premium sector, and they just weren't there before. You would look at the Snapdragon equivalent, and then you would look at the MediaTek, whatever the G series, the Helio series, and they would always be a couple nanometers behind. They would always try and increase like the GPU speed to try and compensate for the lack of the updated CPU architecture, and it's not like that anymore. And these guys right here, I like how they did things. I like how they came out and they said, okay, we're going to do our summit a week before Qualcomm Summit, and of course, lets them get to say, we were the first ones with ray tracing. We were the first ones with Wi-Fi 7. I mean, most of it's semantics, but I really like the aggressive stance that they're doing, and they're really trying to get themselves more out there. And I'm expecting to see some more chips in phones this year. And of course, they just had a Motorola phone. They've got one of their first 5G chipsets in, so kind of cool. But yeah, we'll see what happens. I can't wait to see a smartphone with the Dimensity 9200. It actually beats out the Qualcomm Snapdragon 8 Generation 2 on the Antutu score by a little bit. They're both over 100,000. I think I can look at it here. I was looking at it earlier. I can't remember everything. Like I remember a lot, but the Antutu score, for people who actually care, I don't really look at Antutu scores. But yeah, 1,191,000 for the Snapdragon Generation 2 and 1,277,000 for the MediaTek Dimensity 9200. So serious power. Now, the way they did this, they've got it in a pretty typical core alignment, 8-core processor. The top performance core, the super all-powerful primary core, is 3050 gigahertz. So a little bit less than the Qualcomm Snapdragon 8 Generation 2, clocking at 3.2. However, the performance cores, they're running 3 instead of 4, but they're at 2.85 gigahertz instead of the 2.8 that the Snapdragon is. And then they've got the efficiency cores. They've got a couple of those. I'm trying to remember all this. I don't want to bore you all, but I try to memorize as much of this as I can. So, sorry, it's 4 cores at 1.8. So, primary core 3.05 gigahertz, 3 at 2.85, and then you get 4 at 1.8. And I think that's pretty notable. It's something that should give you a pretty good improvement in performance. So, based off of looking at the improvements on the Dimensity 9200 over last year's 9000, there are some notable things to talk about. So when we look at the overall power performance increase, we're looking at 25% CPU performance power. So 25% more powerful, 41% more powerful GPU, and the APU, which I'll talk about that more in depth, is 45% more powerful. I'm talking on machine learning, AI stuff, denoise on photos and things like that. They've got a new image signal processor. I apologize, last video I called it image signaling processor. Basically, it's the little chip on board that processes the signal that gets sent from the camera, and it's capable of 8K video and all sorts of great stuff. I mean, it's something that I think is really going to be competitive And that's the big moral of the story here is I think it's going to be competitive, and that's why I can't wait to see it in phones. You're not going to see it in a Samsung. You're not going to see it in an Apple phone. You're not going to see it in a Google phone. But probably phones you'll see it in, maybe a Realme phone. You'll see it maybe in a Xiaomi phone or a Redmi phone or maybe even an Oppo. There's a pretty long history of some Chinese brands that use the MediaTek processor. I mean, I just also covered the the OnePlus Nord N300, and it had the MediaTek Dimensity 810 in it. So they're starting to trickle over here to the US in some of the phones, but I like what they bring to the table. Also, they of course announced that they were the first smartphone system on a chip that had ray tracing. So ray tracing is kind of a lighting and shadow effect thing that's been really big in GPUs, graphics processor units, and your graphics cards on your PC. Ever since the RTX series came out, ray tracing has been the big thing. And they've even gone back and they've updated certain old games, even like Minecraft, adding the ray tracing elements. And you can see the glowing and the orange and like the light off of the walls from the torches and all the shadow effects. It's really cool. And it's very demanding. So the fact that they've got this in smartphones now, really crazy. So both the Dimensity 9200 and the Snapdragon 8 Generation 2 both have ray tracing support. So they've got a pretty nice GPU in here. And like I said, 41% extra GPU performance? That's pretty darn good and a year-over-year upgrade. So they really went big in that department, and they want people to know that you can hang and you can do all this stuff with your chipset. So the power efficiency is going to be good. The extended battery life is going to be good. The APU. Now, the APU, what that is that does a couple of different things, but primarily that's the brains for a lot of stuff like, well, your machine learning, AI, and things like that. It's kind of balanced between the APU and the GPU, and it's pretty much historically been done with the GPU. So for instance, when it comes to a PC, this is a graphics processor. This is a graphics card. GPU, this is a couple years old. This is my 1660 Super. It was in one of my kids' computers, not an RTX series, a GTX series. This one doesn't do ray tracing, but you imagine in a computer, this is a small graphics card. The one I have is like this big, and it costs way more than any of these phones would cost, but it's insane to me that they put such a powerful graphics component along with the processor. We're talking a 3.05 gigahertz CPU, 8 cores, GPU, APU built-in, modem, all of that stuff in this tiny, tiny, tiny little chip. Like, it's so small. And it goes inside your phone. And as you can see, there's no cooling fan, there's no liquid cooling, there's none of that crazy stuff. I mean, I had the Red Magic 7S Pro, and we saw that video the other day, 20,000 RPM cooling fan. That goes a long way to make sure that your phone stays cool, that you can play your games, you don't have the frame drops. That's great. But most phones don't have that. They have passive cooling. So that means just air radiating in and off of the processor, the heat piping, the heat shielding, whatever they put in there to kind of siphon off that heat away from the system on a chip is what keeps your phone cool. So that's why whenever we have something like, let's say, the Sony Xperia 1 Mark IV, you're trying to shoot 4K video or even 1080p video, trying to shoot outside, it's hot. Yeah, they overheat because this right here powers so much stuff, and you can always tell the phone gets warm. Usually it's below the camera, kind of over to the center, off center to the left, and then the phone will get hot, and you'll notice, well, that's the CPU, or sorry, the SoC getting hot. That's just how it happens. So they've made some leaps and bounds in this stuff. It's supposed to be better. Now, what you can expect with this, you're going to be able to play AAA games. You're going to be able to, you can you can edit video on there if you want. If you want to get one of the video editing apps, I can't remember what the new one is. Is it LumaFusion? I think that they've got it in beta, or it's at least with Samsung, or Power Director. You can edit your video straight on your phone. I used to do this years and years ago. A guy who's really synonymous with showing this stuff off is Juan Carlos Bagnell, some gadget guy, and he loves to show that stuff off to what you can do like PC level stuff on your phone. And it's true. I mean, I remember whenever I got my first gigahertz processor in my computer, and this was like 2000, 2001. It was a Celeron chip, and I thought it was the greatest thing ever. 1,000 megahertz, right? Because before that, I had like a 650 megahertz, 686. Before that, I had like an AMD K62 clocked at like 350 megahertz, all the way back to way back in the beginning. I mean, I remember when my family and I first got our very first Pentium chip, which was the Intel very first Pentium. Actually, it wasn't the 66 hertz. It was a 75 megahertz is what it was. And I overclocked it to 90 megahertz. It was funny because back then I wanted to be able to play Age of Empires, the very first one, and it was one of those things where it would check your system to see if you had the hardware requirements before it would let it run, and it needed 90 megahertz, and mine was at 75, so I overclocked it. I overclocked it so I could run Age of Empires, and it worked. It was just one of those things where a lot of the stuff that I learned and I picked up and the things I did for computers all had to do with gaming. I can remember when I got my very first graphics card, which was like 1 megahertz, sorry, a 1 megabyte GPU, and then I got a 4 megabyte after that. But yeah, it's so much has changed, but so much still stays the same. There's so much competition here, and MediaTek is got a lot of cool stuff here that they're doing, and they've got the LDDR5X, and it's actually the clock speed is maxed out at like 8,533 megahertz, I think. Like, it's significantly faster than what you get on the Qualcomm Snapdragon. So one cool thing here, I want to talk about the GPU. 11 cores. They call it the Immortalis GPU G715. Look, that's an awesome name, Immortalis. I was impressed with that one, but it's got 2 times ALU throughput, 3 times triangle throughput, 2 times FP16 blender throughput, 2 times machine learning improvement, Vulkan 1.3 support, hardware-based ray tracing, and VRS. So some significant stuff there that really opens it up, and that's why you get the 41% increase. But 17 billion transistors on here. 17 billion transistors in this little chip. That's just insane to me. I wish they'd maybe come up with another name other than... it's cool they do the series like the 9200, but you've got the Immortalis GPU. I mean, maybe they could come up with a cool name for the CPU, but some really cool stuff going on there. Also, the APU, like I said, it's, 45% increase. So a lot of the machine learning AI stuff, big things they're applying this to. A lot of it has to do with imaging and image quality and being able to get like the really good bokeh effect when you're doing live video stuff. Also the low light photography and really cool things that it does, like the algorithm-based computational photography. That's something that Google kind of spearheaded, and now everybody's doing it. So that's when you take those photos and they might not look the greatest, and then you wait like a second after it takes a photo and then it looks all nice and sharp and clear. That's what a lot of that stuff does. So especially you get like your top shot, your best shot, your live photos, all those things that these phones do now. There's just so much that goes into the AI and the machine learning. And if you even look at the Google Tensor G2, that's one of the things that allows all the cool things like the smart replies on the phone. If you want to do like send a voice message to somebody, it'll convert it to text so you can read it. Or you get the cool things like the call assistant, the call blocker, you get the smart replies, you get the computational photography, you get the Google translation, you get the onboard speech to text, which, you know, it used to take so long, especially with the iPhone, was notorious for it. You would be talking and it would take several seconds because it would send it off to one of their offsite servers to analyze it and then send it back. So the data processing, all the AI and machine learning stuff has gotten so good. So much of that stuff can be done on board now. And of course, this is going to make photos even better. And what's nice with the ISP, the image signal processor on here, is not only does it analyze and produce RGB, but also RGBW. Also throws in the white component. So it's really going to help out with photography, low light, and HDR stuff. So there's a lot to be excited about here. And I know this is another long video of me geeking and nerding out, talking about all the PC stuff that correlates over to the system on a chip, but a lot of people don't think about this. So much stuff in here dictates the requirements and the capabilities of a phone because they're limited by the SoC. For instance, like when we took a look at the Snapdragon, was it the 695 or maybe that's what it was. But anyway, it was one of the phones this last year that they had. I think it was in the Nord 2 or the Nord something like that. One of them, it was limited. Like, it should have been able to maybe do like 4K video. You would think the phone could do 4K video, but it wasn't limited by the camera. It's actually limited by the CPU because the CPU doesn't actually support 4K video. So there's a lot of stuff on here and that's one reason why phones aren't supported for like 10 years. If you ever think about it, so many things change from time to time. Once you get to about that 4 or 5 year mark, you start to get turnovers and a lot of the hardware capabilities. I mean, shoot, ray tracing on a chip on your phone. Of course, it's Wi-Fi 7 enabled as well. So once Wi-Fi 7 is going to be able to, once it's out somewhere and you can connect to it, it's ready for Wi-Fi 7. It works with Wi-Fi 6, Bluetooth 5.3, low energy Bluetooth, and then you of course got the new memory and UFS. all that great stuff. I think it's UFS 4, so you're going to get faster read and write speeds. And that's something that's important as you start looking at it. It's 5G, millimeter wave, ultra wideband, UW, all that cool stuff. Well, sometimes you're limited, right? So if you're downloading at a gigabyte per second connection, 1 Gbps, and then it comes to your hardware and you've got like eMMC memory, you're going to be downloading faster than you can actually read and write the stuff to your RAM or to your ROM storage. So this is one of the next frontiers as we're moving more and more into a high-speed realm, is getting the fast data. We've been so obsessed with speeds, right? So it's faster, faster, faster. But we've been neglecting things like some of the hardware components on the inside to actually take advantage of it. So now the read and write speeds, we're going to get the better, faster memory, the better, faster internal storage, the better, faster download, better, faster Wi-Fi. It's just getting better and better and better. So that's kind of my synopsis on the MediaTek Dimensity 9200. I've talked about this quite a bit, but again, a big thank you to MediaTek for having me out. I love this. Like I could collect these things. I would really like to get my hands on a Qualcomm one. So like Snapdragon guys, if you happen to watch my video, you didn't invite me to your conference, but if you want to send me one of your chips, I mean, that'd be cool. I'd like it. Anyway, so that's all I got. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. I tried to be as animated as possible, but you can probably tell I enjoy talking about this stuff. Especially because it's new and it's exciting. It's not necessarily a Pixel video or a Samsung video or an Apple video. So I'll go ahead and wrap this one up. But let me know what you think in the comment section. Let me know if you like these videos. Maybe I can do some more stuff. I've really been wanting to get more into kind of analyzing some of the data and the data processing stuff, the machine learning, the AI, I try to explain some of that stuff. But really, there's so much that goes into it other than just saying, oh, well, it's good for the computational photography. It's better for nighttime shots, right? Well, there's a lot more that goes into it than that. And it's been a big emphasis and a frontier pusher on the silicon side for a while, ever since basically the advent of the Snapdragon 888. That was the first big stab at it that Qualcomm took, I think, in that direction. It was a big, like, 35-40% improvement, and that was the first time I think we saw a jump like that on the phone hardware side. But anyway, a lot of this is from memory, so I hope I did it justice. I hope I did a good job talking about this stuff, and I'm going to shut up now. I got some Pokemon I got to go play. I'm downloading it right now on my Nintendo Switch as we speak, so I got some gaming to do. But thanks for watching, and if you enjoyed the video, please hit the like and the subscribe button, little notification bell, all that cool stuff. Because, yeah, I'd love to have you come back, and I hope you like the videos. And as always, thanks for being here. I appreciate you watching, and I'll see you guys next time.